Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Mark, and hello, everybody. And on behalf of the Information Overload Research Group, I welcome you to Information Overload Day 2018. This year, we have the theme of addiction, neuroscience, and information overload, and I hope you will leave with better insight that will allow you to resist the addictive nature of the infoglut and improve life and effectiveness for yourself and for those around you. I wish to thank NoMail, who make an impressive AI-based solution to email overload, for sponsoring this event and encourage you to check out their product. And I want to thank Email Logic for providing the GoToWebinar infrastructure we're using and supporting us in its use so well. Now, a quick look at the program today. If we can have the program slide, what we're going to have is Jonathan Spira, who is a board member of IORG and actually our director, our vice president and director of research and managing director of Acura Media Group, and he will give us an introduction to Information Overload 101. Then we have a talk by Anne McGee Stinson of the Effective Edge, who has been studying the addictive nature of this problem for many years, and she will talk about neuroscience and the problem of information overload. Then we have a different angle from Dr. Liraz Margalit of ClickTail, and she will talk about bringing big data to life by adding the behavioral perspective. And you can stay intrigued until she tells you what that is. And finally, we have a panel on addiction and information overload, which will be moderated by Lele Terenzani of IBM. And the participants will be Monica Seeley, Mark Powell, and myself. Jackie has been taken ill, so I will be sitting in for her. So that's our agenda for today. And now first I want to tell you that if you want to ask questions or make comments through any of the presentations, use the chat. Just type them in when they pop into your head, and we will see them, and we will answer some or all of them after each talk. And now I invite Jonathan Spira, our VP of Research and Senior Managing Director of Acura Media Group, to present Information Overload 101.
Let's get this to work. Do you see my slides? I'll assume if
we can see them.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to Information Overload Day 2018, a holiday I concocted in my mind 8 years ago. I want to thank everyone here for coming along on this voyage. And you can see the logo I created in the right before I created Information Overload Day. Hope it gets the point across. Like to cover a couple of topics relating to information overload basics, starting with the idea of work. We have still in our minds a very almost romantic notion of the workplace, usually a monolithic building such as this, and the workforce, what people do. When we think of workers, we hardly ever think of knowledge workers, even though there are a plurality of the workforce today. So I'm just going to quickly define the knowledge worker as a participant in the knowledge economy. We all have different ideas what the knowledge economy is, so we'll just accept that and go on. But I always like to point out when I speak my favorite knowledge worker question, which comes from the movie Desk Set. And if you haven't seen Desk Set, it's a very information overload focused and knowledge economy focused movie. What kind of car did the king of the Watusis drive? Spencer Tracy asks Hepburn. If you don't know the answer, I'll tell you at the end of the program, at the end of my presentation. Anyway, if you do, just feel to throw it out in the chat or questions. Another major change is that at the end of the last century, unskilled labor represented 80%, 90%, excuse me, of workers. Today, that's barely 20%. Something that just popped up at me just in the past day, how did we lose that? Was the study that IKEA introduced that talked about a variety of subjects, but one key statistic was that 45% of Americans go to their car for a private moment. which reminded me, of course, of a very famous actress, Greta Garbo, who said, "I want to be alone." But it's amazing how technology has driven us to seek refuge in an automobile as opposed to somewhere else when we just want a private moment, because all of the bells, whistles, and dings and noises that come at us from various devices are just too much. Talking about knowledge workers, just a quick overview of what they do. They search, they create, they recreate, they spend a tremendous amount of time communicating, and more obviously, they network socially. I also wanted to bring up something I brought up in my last book on information overload, which is entitled "Overload: How Too Much Information is Hazardous to Your Organization." The case of the two Freds. Fred Smith, if you don't know him, he created FedEx and made it possible, if you absolutely positively want to have it somewhere the next day, you can. And Fred Rogers, who told every last child in the United States that he or she is special. Huge mistake there. That created the impression that many people feel that everything they are doing right now, regardless of what it is urgent and important, and it created a tremendous need for instant gratification, which results in my interrupting you because what you're doing couldn't possibly be as important as what you are doing, right? As what I'm doing, excuse me. This is a lovely chart that demonstrates how interruptions take hold based on my data from about 7 or 8 years ago, and it shows that we lose about 28% of the day from interruptions, and something very key, recovery time. Recovery time is a concept I kind of strategically stumbled over in 2004. It's the time it takes you to get back to where you were before you were so rudely interrupted. And it's very discreet. You don't really notice that recovery time is starting. You just feel the effect at the end of the day when a third of your day is missing. It's not as if you sit with your watch and say, okay, I'm starting my recovery time now. Let's go, let's go, let's go. It just stops you. And sometimes, by the way, you don't actually return to what you were doing before. So this is an average. That's why there are a few potholes ahead, namely information overload. Love to define information overload as I did in my book, Overload. An excess of information that results in a loss of ability to make decisions, process information, and prioritize tasks. That's pretty much what we do. So it stops you from doing what you do. There have been a lot of changes in the enterprise environment. As I mentioned, knowledge workers are the plurality of the workforce and workplace. The companies are still not completely prepared, doing better, of course, but still not prepared, especially for the fact that 40% of workers today now work in non-traditional, non-divergent environments. Let's look for a moment, because this is 101 and there is, yes, a quiz at the end, so please take notes. What causes information overload? An increase in content creation, a very clear increase in the modalities on which information comes to us. Email overload, we were discussing before how many emails we got. Interruptions, which I just explained in conjunction with recovery time. Ubiquitous connectivity, which is something that's actually almost working. I am now able to send emails and text in the lift in my high-rise building where I reside. I'm not sure if that's good. That used to be a quiet moment. And lots of contradictory information out there. I believe today it's called fake news. And what does information overload cause? Lower productivity, lower comprehension levels, lower concentration levels, lower innovation levels. Do you get the theme here? It skews what little remains of work-life balance and allows a quick propagation of mistakes. I don't even need to explain all the technology-based interruptions that go on today. You can see them here. It's just almost pedantic for me to read the slide, but we have created unreasonable expectation times for people to respond where people seem to expect me to have responded to an email before they have even sent it. That's very Tom Lehrer-esque, and if you're not familiar with Tom Lehrer, the great satirist, I suggest you become familiar. Further, to illustrate this, created this chart to show you the rise of information overload. See, it's going up. Any questions? Whoever raises their hand now gets to stay after class and clean the erasers. Conrad Gessner, in 1545, warned of a confusing and harmful abundance of books, echoed almost 120 years, for 140 years, I'm very bad at maths, years later, saying, we have reason to believe that the multitude of books which grows every day in a prodigious fashion, we have to warn, we're warning against that. Today, there are 78.6 million knowledge workers in the United States alone, based on careful calculations that I actually had someone check because I'm so bad at maths. And research shows that information overload cost the U.S. economy in 2010, which is last year, we have full figures for, $997 billion. I'm going to end with a few statistics. Just please keep these in mind. Every time you click send, for every 100 people who are unnecessarily copied on an email, 8 hours are lost, largely due to recovery time. 66% of knowledge workers today feel they do not have enough time to get their work done. 94% of those whom I surveyed at some point have felt overwhelmed by information overload to the point of incapacitation. The hashtag I created when I created Information Overload Day is Lower the Overload. Please feel free to use it today and share how you are indeed lowering the overload. And I wish everyone a happy Information Overload Day. Good day.
Thank you, Jonathan. And now I invite Anne McGee Stinson, who is Managing Partner and Director of Practice at Effective Edge, to share her insights about neuroscience and the problem of information overload.
Thank you very much, Nathan, and thank you, Jonathan. What a really profound and powerful introduction. It certainly sets up the context for the problem. It is nothing new, and part of what I heard Jonathan share is that one of the challenges that we have in terms of neuroscience and the way our brains handle this information overwhelm, this glut of information, is that we may be dealing with it on a basis of the industrial age, where we're trying to process information as if we were processing widgets on an assembly line. In other words, are we measuring our productivity based on the amount of information that we process? If so, that can be part of the problem. Jonathan did a fantastic job outlining some of the statistics, and at Effective Edge, we've been busy collecting survey and statistics for more than 22 years. And so I just want to support much of what I heard Jonathan saying. The problem is overwhelming. We have people who are stressed out, we're not focusing on objectives, we're spending way too much information or time in managing our information and not managing our goals and our strategies. Part of the problem here is that when we are dealing with short-term tactical information such as processing email, there's a text, there's an email, there's a text, there's an email, there's a telephone call, our brains start to become short-term and tactically focused. So we literally train our brains to be short-term and tactical rather than long-term and strategic by the way that we deal with information. One of the key things that we want to talk about when it comes to neuroscience and the problem of information overwhelm is the amazing, explosive studies that have been done in the last 25 to 30 years only on how our brains actually respond to all of this information overwhelm. Neuroplasticity is the idea that our brains change. 30 years ago, it was thought that our brains remain pretty much unchangeable after a certain point in time. But in the last 30 years, the concept of neuroplasticity has shown that our brains continue to develop and change and grow over the course of our lifetime. Now, what's particularly interesting about this is what we think, do, and pay attention to changes the physical structure and function of our brains. Now, the slide that I've chosen to depict this as a metaphor is a tremendous mountain range. And as a metaphor, if you can imagine that when rain first begins to fall on those mountains, the rain can go anywhere it pleases. It can go any direction. But over time, the rain will begin to form rivulets and channels. And after a while, the rain, when it falls, will only go into those same channels. Well, this is exactly the way the human brain works. And so what's fascinating, though, is that we can change the channels. So I'm going to state again on the slide, what we think, what we do, and what we pay attention to changes the physical structure and function of our brains. So relative to information overload, if we are using our brains and use it consistently in a short-term tactical response, well, we're training our brains to think that way. So one thing that we might want to consider doing is thinking longer term, spending more time, extended time on strategic thinking, planning out our calendars so that we have what I call long-form thinking time. Those are just a few examples of some things that we can do to break the almost addictive behaviors that we have relative to short-term tactical thinking and information overwhelm. So here's our average information worker. Constant distractions. Now again, relative to neuroscience, what we know is that the human brain is designed to pay attention to the most distracting element in the environment. This is how we maintain safety when we were in the hunting and gathering phase of our evolution. So if we heard a rustle in the bushes, surely it was a tiger, and our brains are trained to pay attention to that. But in the workplace, constant distraction, constant disruption, there are tigers everywhere lurking in the bushes. And we're trying to deal with each and every one of them. So it creates stress, obviously, as Jonathan clearly outlined. It creates an inability to function, to make decisions, and so on. So here's how our brains actually work relative to information incoming. At any given point in time, did you know that you're exposed to more than 2 million bits of information? So all of the listeners online, I'd like you just to sit in your chair and look around your room, wherever you may be. Perhaps you want to look up at your ceiling. And as you look up at your ceiling, you may just notice the color, the texture, and so on and so forth. But there's a lot more information that you are not noticing. So out of that 2 million bits of information, our brains, through our senses, our sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste, only receive a small fraction of the information that's available at any given point in time. The rest of the time, our brains, again, are designed to generalize, delete, and distort. So look up at your ceiling again, and you can now, if you focus, notice maybe some different color variations. Perhaps you'll notice some lighting. Perhaps you'll notice deep textural distinctions, different colorations, and so on and so forth. So our brains are designed to generalize the incoming information, delete information that is not relevant, or distort it to make it fit our what is most important to us in the moment. Now, let's play a little game here and see how it actually impacts our decision making. So I'd like everybody who's on the call just to look at the screen here for a moment. And the game, it's a little brain game. I'd like you to imagine that in one hand, let's say your right hand, you have some red beads. In your left hand, you've got some blue beads. Now you can see on the screen, I've got a red box and I've got a blue box. And I'm going to ask you to organize the beads. All right, so we're just going to play along. So here comes a red bead. Where does it go? It goes into the red box. Here comes a blue bead. Where does it go? It goes into the blue box. A red bead, red box. Blue bead, blue box. Red bead, red box. Blue bead, blue box. Green bead. Did everybody notice what happened in your brain just then? For most of us, we may notice just this moment of pause, this moment of like, I don't know what to do with that. That's procrastination. And we procrastinate when we don't know what to do with something, when we don't know where to organize it, because the brain's natural ability is to organize information. So when this little green dot shows up and we have no place to put it, our brains go on pause. It's a little bit like a blue screen. So what do we do with this green bead? And what is the solution to it? Well, I'm going to play another little game with you here for just another moment. Watch the screen. Now, I'm going to show you in just a second here some dots, and I want you to count how many dots there are, and you're only going to have just a very few seconds, so pay attention. All right. Now, in the chat room, go ahead and put, how many dots did you see? How many dots do you think you saw in that few seconds? 58. 20. All right, so quite a range. Now I'm going to show the dots again, a little different configuration. So please watch the screen. You're only going to have a few seconds, and I'm going to show you the same number of dots. Ready? How many dots? Great, 25. Great, 25, 25. And look at the consistency there. So this is the difference between organizing data and chaos. So our brains naturally organize, and when we can organize information into groupings and categorizations, then you notice that the way that we process that information is much, much faster, and we can avoid that feeling of, I don't know what to do with the green dot. So how you organize information is one of the critical things that you can do to help you to manage information overwhelm. Now, part of the effect that we're dealing with here is called the Zeigarnik effect. It is based on the studies of a Russian psychologist in the 1920s who noticed that the human brain tends to pay attention to things that are incomplete and disorganized or unorganized. In other words, when we haven't made a clear decision, when we have incomplete actions, incomplete emails, incomplete tasks, incomplete projects, that tends to get our attention much more quickly and retains our attention much longer. So I'd like to play another game with you on this, just so that you can, again, experience the effect of this in your own brain and explore solutions that actually help you to deal with the information overwhelm. So when you look at this little slide, you'll notice some figures, some symbols there on the screen. And where does your attention go? In the chat room, you can answer the question, where does your attention tend to go? The outline. Thank you. All right, and if you're like many of us, our attention tends to go to the areas that are incomplete. Now, keep watching the screen and let me show you something. So this is the Zeigarnik effect in action. Notice how when we complete the circle, that we get a sense of relief. We get a sense of completion, closure. And by the way, this shows up in our language as well. So oftentimes we hear phrases like, I need to close the loop, or I want some closure on that. So that is an example of the Zeigarnik in effect. So again, notice where your attention goes. Our brain naturally wants to complete. And when we do have those completes, we get this sense of relief. Now, how can we do that in a workplace that is overwhelmed with information? One of the things that we know, and tremendous amount of studies, tremendous amount of data now shows that mindfulness training helps us to train our quality of attention so that we can achieve what martial artists call mind like water. Now, what mind like water really is the experience of having a calm, clear, collected mind, where we're not having a lot of churn, where we don't have a lot of things going on, not a lot of random ideas. So the benefit of having mind like water, which mindfulness training teaches us, is if your mind is calm, cool, and collected, like a calm, cool, collected lake, and you were to drop a pebble into that calm, clear water, the water would respond in direct proportion to the size of the pebble. However, when our minds are churning, when we have all these incompletes, when we have, this glut of information, and we can throw a boulder into a churning water and we wouldn't even notice it. We might not even notice that the boulder has dropped in. In other words, we wouldn't be aware. We wouldn't have situational awareness such that we could deal with a situation or circumstance in proportion to the size of the data dropping in. Now, the final piece that I want to share with you about how the mind works relative to information flow and that we can use to our benefit is what's known as the reticular activating system. Fundamentally, the reticular activating system is a bundle of neurons in the back of the brain that has tremendous implication in the way that we focus. So there are three components of the reticular activating system that are relevant to our work today. The first is that you can only focus on one thing at a time. And to demonstrate this, what I'd like to ask our audience to do is just, again, sit back in your chair and hold out your arm and stick out your thumb and look at your thumb. So really look at your thumb, look at the nail, look at the knuckle. Perhaps you'll notice that it has some polish or needs some polish. So when you look at your thumb, what happens to the background beyond your thumb? If you're like most of it, is probably a little blurry, maybe you're seeing double. So now focus on the background beyond your thumb. Keep your thumb up there, but focus on the background. So as you focus on the background beyond your thumb, what happens to your thumb? So the thumb becomes blurry and doubled. So this is the reticular activating system, which teaches us that we can only focus on one thing at a time. And I know that Information Overload Research Group has done a number of pieces on this, that multitasking and switch tasking is not productive. And that's because of this bundle of nerves in the back of the brain that has us confirm our focus. Now, the second element of the reticular activating system that I want to talk about today is that we get more of what we focus on. So let's look around our rooms again. And this time I'm going to give you just a few seconds. And as you look around your room, I'd like you to count the number of things that you see that are blue. Please look for blue. Notice blue. find all the blue things that you can see. All right. And now my question for your group, your IBM is blue is all around. That's great. Lily, how many red things did you see in that short period of time? How many red things did you see? How many yellow things did you see? How many round things, square things, triangle things? So because I ask you to focus on blue, your reticular activating system and that natural tendency for the brain to filter out irrelevant information went into action. And so what you saw was blue, and what you filtered out was anything other than blue. So you didn't see reds, you didn't see the yellows, you didn't see all of the other shape sizes, and so on. Now, we can use this to our benefit. The third and final piece of the reticular activating system is that don't doesn't work. So when we say, you know, don't think about a pink elephant dancing on the middle of your keyboard. It doesn't work for us as human beings because the brain wants to think about the pink elephant, and then it sort of puts that cross through it, like on Jonathan's slide, like, don't think about this. So any of you who have children and have told them don't spill the milk or don't eat the ice cream or don't eat candy or whatever your don't message is very familiar with the way that this actually works in human beings. In other words, it doesn't. So we have to think about what we do want to do as opposed to what we don't. So what we do want to do and what can help us is to use our brains in all of its glory to train our brains to focusing on goals. So there are the key neurological aspects of our brains. And to help us to deal with this information overload, I find that there are a couple of things that are critically important. First of all, learn to manage your distractions and disruptions. Learn to manage them, because information overwhelm and overload isn't going away anytime soon. So it's up to us. It's kind of an inside-out job to learn to address them. So learning to manage distractions, and then secondly, focusing on goals. So Daniel Pink, in his most recent book, talks about the drive, human motivation, and in it he states that intrinsic motivation, our ability to focus on those goals that really speak to the emotional qualities that are important to us, that helps us to filter out information overload so that we focus on what matters most. So in summary, train your brain. It can be trained. It's malleable, and using the concept of neuroplasticity, we can train our brain to focus on what matters most, limit distractions, turn off your pings, dings, and all of those notifiers so you don't respond to things just like a Pavlovian dog, organize to prevent procrastination and overload. So having clear categories of actions, tasks, and projects. Complete what matters most so that you're not procrastinating and your attention doesn't get stalled out on incomplete matters, and focusing on goals. These are the things that can help us to deal with that information overload. Thank you.
Brilliant, Anne. Thank you. We have a few questions for you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Howard has asked, sorry, not Howard, I apologize. Mike has asked, can you recommend any mindfulness and or focus books, websites, or blogs?
Oh my goodness, there are hundreds of them out there. So yes, indeed, I would look at any kind of brain training. I think HemiSync is excellent because what it does is it uses subliminal music to help to develop both sides of the brain, and it's a great meditation qualities. I think the books out there are tremendous. There's hundreds of them. And anything if you're interested in yoga, yoga is a wonderful way to begin creating mindfulness between the body, the brain and mind-body connection, and is also, quite good for you physically.
Great, thanks. And Sandro has asked, very interesting, how can we follow up and go deeper into the topic?
Yes, well, this is our work at Effective Edge. So for more than 22 years now, this is our business, and what we do in the corporate sector is help people to build systems so that they can learn how to manage their attention and energy and focus on what matters most. I also want to recommend a couple of, I think, groundbreaking books. Besides Daniel Goleman, who of course wrote EQ, Emotional Intelligence, which has a lot of information and is easy to read. I would also recommend the work of Dan Siegel. Dan Siegel is an integrative neurobiologist. So he again deals with the mind-body connection, but he does it in a very powerful and easy to read, practical way. And that's what I'm particularly interested in, is what is the practical application of the neurosciences.
Thank you. Lele Emmanuel has asked, do you think that expert meditators are less influenced by information overload? And how much time do you think we should practice each day to start getting that benefit?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. Dozens and dozens and dozens of studies coming out, through Harvard Business Review, through all of the best periodicals, through the Journal of Neuroscience, that demonstrate this conclusively. Meditators are by far more effective at managing all information, not only information overwhelm, but just the ability to focus on situations, circumstances in the moment, and make critical decisions, based on what's happening in the moment, as opposed to, habituated behaviors or habitual training.
Great. And Justin is asking, he's saying business speakers are stating that technology moves so fast, companies must keep up to pace day by day. So how does one stay focused in an ever-moving tech world and sustain your business?
So, brilliant question. And of course, I'm very familiar with that. We're very familiar with that. So, having clear goals is only part of the performance equation. So we are talking about human performance. Having clear goals is part of that equation, but being able to check in and evaluate and review those goals and make adjustments. So sometimes we set goals and then, we have our strategic plan sitting on a shelf for the next year. We don't look at it until it's time for evaluations. So what we propose is, a system that helps us to stay connected to those goals. First of all, that they're intrinsically motivated, that they come from the team, that you have true alignment from your team when creating goals. Secondly, that you consistently create actions that relate to those goals. Third, that you use your calendar rigorously to schedule time to complete the actions that relate to those goals. And then fourth, that you do regular reviews relative to the goals so that you know that you're on track, and you know when you go off track and can make course corrections immediately.
Okay. And one last question, I think, from Monica. She said, how do you convince the top executives of the need for these solutions when they are maybe the worst at perpetuating information overload?
Well, they're the worst at perpetuating it sometimes because they don't know any better. So I believe, honestly, and work with many executives around the world, that executives are in as great a pain as any other creature on the planet right now. I know this for a fact, that information overwhelm is something that they're dealing with as much as anyone else. And of course, on top of that, they have the burden of trying to remain strategic. But if we don't understand how our brains work in this environment and learn to use the emerging technology and studies that neuroscience gives us on a golden platter to retrain our brain in the way that we focus our attention and energy, then we're going to pay the price, no question about it. So I think educating people and giving all of our friends, you know, in corporate environment, the tools, which means the education and the tools to manage how they pay attention to information, is the real solution. It's an inside-out job.
Great. Just one last one from Vince. He said a personal view is that one of the root causes behind information overload is the term abbreviated as FOMO, fear of missing out, which I think we've probably all heard of now. I think to a certain degree that the brains of today have evolved to naturally want to be overwhelmed, and the more information it receives, the better it feels. Is there a way to reverse that?
Yes, and I'm curious to hear what some of our other panelists will say about that, because there's a bit of debate about, you know, is that a chemical response, or is it a behavioral response that is, you know, a habituated behavior where fear of missing out is just, you know, it's a Pavlovian response that we can retrain. But there are chemical responses in the brain when we go do an email. There are endorphins and dopamine that, you know, that occur when we encounter something new. It's more complex than saying it's a simple addiction, and I know that some of the upcoming panelists have some additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that in a short while. Nathan.
Yep. So thank you, Anne. And
you're welcome.
You are welcome too. We're all welcome here. And we are now welcoming Dr. Liraz Margalit, who is head of behavioral research at ClickTale. And she will talk about, well, you see on the screen what she will talk about, and she will explain it to us better than I can possibly do. Go ahead, Liraz.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. And my name is Liraz Margalit. I have a PhD in psychology. I'm specialized in decision-making processes and cognition. And over the past 5 years, I've been utilizing models from cognitive psychology, behavioral economics, and neuropsychology to better understand how customers, how people behave and interact with the digital platform. And today I'm going to talk about information overload from a different perspective, from our customers' perspective. And if we'll think about our customers, a big buzzword today is personalization. And what is personalization? It's actually the realization that we have different types of people, different types of customers, and we have to provide them with different types of experiences. But we are not so good at doing so because we don't really think about our customers. We really think about big data, about the numbers, about the different data points. But what I will try to convince you today is that if you like to personalize the experience, and if you like to create a distilled experience, we really need to understand the customer's psychology. We need to understand how our customers make decisions. And now I would like you to consider the following question. Are we in control of our online or offline decisions for that matter? Now, I'm sure that from the tone of my voice, you realize that the answer is no. And you are right. We are not in control of our online or offline decisions. We like to think of ourselves as rational creatures, as rational human beings who have full control of our decisions. But as a matter of fact, we know that 80% of our everyday decisions are done with little or no conscious thought. You cannot begin to imagine the impact of our cognitive biases, of our emotions, of environmental cues to the way we make decisions. And in this world of information that we live in, we have too much information. And this practically means too many decisions that we have to take every minute of every day. And when we are talking about the online arena, when we are talking about the digital platform, this problem is getting much, much worse. Because if you think about it, we have too many websites, too many services, too many products. And if you think about it from our brain perspective, whenever we need to decide between two service plans, whenever we decide to leave a website, whenever we decide to read an article or to skip an article, we are making a decision. And in order for our brain to make all these different decisions, it needed to develop, it was required to develop a different type of mechanism that is capable of making very quick judgments based on very little information. And as Gladwell wrote intelligently in his book, the only way that human being could have ever survived as species for as long as we have is that we have developed another kind of decision-making apparatus that is capable of making very quick judgments based on very little information. And when we are talking about the business perspective, this is the goal of all the companies today, to understand how the customers think, to understand how the customers make decisions. But it turns out that we are not so successful in doing so. And that is why over the past 10 years, every year was supposed to be the year of personalization, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because we don't think people, we think data. And in order to understand people, we have to think people. We have to understand how our customers make decisions. And in order to personalize the customer experience, and this is what I like to call information overload, we use different types of data, different resources of data. So we use data that relates to the visitor's behavior, such as clicks and page views. And we use data that relates to the item details, such as descriptions and ratings. And of course, we will use social events such as likes and shares. And we will also use context information, such as the type of browser or the type of device. And based on these sources of data, over the years, two main approaches to personalization have been developed: the item-item approach and the user-user approach. So when we are talking about the item-item approach, this model, this algorithm tries to find similarities based on product, on items characteristics. So if, for example, I will buy an orange and an apple, so this algorithm will think to itself, okay, they're both single served, they are both tasty, they're pretty much at the same price, so the next item that I'm going to offer you is going to be a peach or a banana, for example. And now we have the user approach, and this model, this algorithm, is based on the customer's preferences. So if, for example, I ordered on Netflix the movie Pretty Woman and the movie Dirty Dancing, and let's say that there is another user that ordered the exact same movies. So if the next movie that I'm going to order is going to be Ghost, for example, so this model, this algorithm will recommend the movie Ghost to the other user. So those algorithms are partly successful, but they hold one inherent problem. And the problem is that those algorithms are based on the wrong assumption. And the assumption is that our past purchases, our previous behavior, will predict our future behavior. And as a psychologist, I can safely assure you that this assumption is wrong, because if we really like to predict our customers' behavior, there are different types of factors that we need to take into consideration. And one of these factors is the context of which a decision was made. So, for example, I'm not going to behave at my workplace the same way that I'm going to behave in a party. And when we're talking about the online arena, so different websites or different pages equals different context. And there is another factor that we need to take into consideration. So let's say that the context stays the same. I'm in a party. We need to take into consideration the customer's mindset. So I can be in the party and just want to hang out with my friends, and I can be in a party and want to find myself a date. So different mindset equals different behaviors as well. And when we're talking about the online arena, a customer can be goal-oriented, or he can be a browser, and of course it will affect his behavior. So what my team has developed in the past few months is a new model for personalization, and we like to call it the theory or the model of online behavior. And this model incorporates 3 different elements. So the first element is the customer's mindset, the second is personality traits, and the third element is the context of which a decision was made. So what I would like to do now is to talk briefly about the theory of each of these elements, and then I'm going to show you how we can actually understand those elements using behavioral analytics, and then I'm going to show you how we can actually apply this recommendation to our day-to-day lives. So let's start with the first element, with the customer's mindset. Now, what I would like to do now is to show you very quickly an image. And I'm not sure, can we use a poll? Okay. And even if not,
sorry,
just
it's too late now.
Say,
Razia.
Okay. So say the answer to yourself, and then I will say it out loud. What I like to do now is to show you a facial expression, and I would like you to think what is the facial expression in that image. So I guess that most of you say frustration or anger. Now, the real question is, how long did it take you to realize that? And I guess it was very quick. It was almost automatic. And as a matter of fact, let me tell you this. You cannot not detect this man's facial expression, because this capability is extremely important for our social survival. We, psychologists, we call this capability TOM, theory of mind, the ability to understand and infer other people's feelings, other people's behavior. Now I'm going to show you another image. And think to yourself, if you can multiply without using your smartphone and without pen and pencil 17 by 24. So I will give you a moment. Okay, so I guess it wasn't that easy if you actually try to calculate, and it was definitely not automatic. And as a matter of fact, I'm sure most of you didn't even bother to try. So I'm not here to test your mathematical abilities, of course, but I'm here to tell you that we have 2 different systems operating in our mind, System 1 and System 2. So System 1 is the automatic system. It is quick to make decisions or judgment. It does not require cognitive resources. The thing about System 1 is that although most times it leads us to the right answer, sometimes it fails. And when it fails, System 2 comes in to help. And System 2 is not automatic. It is slow to make decisions and judgment. It requires lots of cognitive resources. And while we use it, we cannot be involved in any other task at the same time. Now, not only do we have two different systems, those systems are controlled by different brain areas. So system one, the automatic system, is controlled by our emotion. Did you ever think about the purpose of our emotion? Did you ever consider what is the purpose of our emotions? So the purpose of our emotions is to lead us into taking an action. If I'm in the woods facing a tiger, I don't have time to think, I don't have time to calculate and process my response. I have to react really fast without the other system being involved in the process. And system two, the rational system, it is controlled by our higher level brain areas, by our prefrontal cortex, and that is why it is so slow to make decisions and judgment. Now, I guess that in this point you ask yourself, okay, so how these two different systems are related to information overload and to online behavior. So this is what I'm going to show you right now. So we have a client, a publisher actually, and they asked us to analyze the customer's behavior on this specific page. This page was extremely important for them. And the first thing that they do before starting to analyze the customer behavior is to understand, okay, so what is the purpose of this specific page? Now here, the purpose of this page was to expose the customers to as many content and articles as possible. Now, there are two ways that customers can arrive to this page from the homepage. Now I'm going to show you the homepage. So this is the homepage. And there are two ways that you can arrive to the target page. So the first way is to click on the navigation bar. You can see the pink square, the little pink square. And then there is a pop-up window, and then you can go immediately and directly to the target page. But there is another way, an indirect way, and that is to watch a video on the homepage. And after you finish watching the video, you are redirected to the other page. This is the indirect way. This is like a manipulation that the sites pull off in order to attract customers to the other page. So what we decided to do is to analyze if there are differences between customers who arrived directly to this page and customers who arrived indirectly to this page. And we found that there are dramatic differences. So first, in terms of clicks, customers who arrived unintentionally to this page, I mean indirectly, so we can see that they clicked on many more clickable elements compared to the customers who arrived directly. In terms of engagement time, the time that customers spent actively on this page, we can see that customers who arrived unintentionally after finish watching the video, they spent much more time on the page compared to customers who arrived directly. Now we decided to look on their next pages, and what we saw is that customers who arrived directly to this page, so they clicked mostly on search element on the regular and alphabetical search and on navigation elements, while customers who arrived indirectly to this page, they clicked more about on featured articles, on colorful images, on video. So then we saw that there are different behavioral patterns here. So we have customers who arrived directly to this page, the goal-oriented customers, meaning they knew what they want, they were goal-oriented, they knew exactly what they want, they were focused on their target, but not only did they know what they want, they know exactly how to accomplish their goal on the page. They were much more active on the page. They led the interaction. And we decided to coin the other group the browsers, because they were much more passive on the page and they let the website lead the interaction. So imagine yourself going back home after a long day at the office, take off your shoes, sit at the computer, and as if you say to the computer, entertain me, and he does so by providing you with a stimulating environment. like BuzzFeed, for example, one article after another. So now we wanted to see if there are differences in their engagement, in their behavioral patterns, in the interaction with the website. So we can see here two heat maps, and the red is for the most attention on the page. So what you see here is that customers who arrive directly, they spend time mostly on the search element, on the search alphabetically, and on the regular search that you can see in red. While the customers who arrived unintentionally, they were all over the place, without clear direction, without clear goal, just browsing. So now I would like to take you back to the two systems. And what do you think? Which of the two brain systems is dominant in each behavioral pattern? So I guess most of you said that system 1 is for the browsers, and system 2, the rational system, is for the goal-oriented, because customers who are goal-oriented, they knew exactly what they want, so they need to focus, they need to concentrate in order to find what they want, while customers that just came to derive pleasure from the experience, so we can call them browsers. So they actually, for them, the emotional system was much more dominant. So this is what we hypothesize, but we cannot jump into conclusion before testing it. So this is what we decided to do. We decided to test it. So we collaborated with another company that conduct EEG researches. And EEG is actually recording of electrical brain signals. And we took two groups of subjects, and we took one of our clients, the North Face, and we asked our customers to sit in front of their website. And for one group of customers or of subjects, we asked them to do a specific task, to find the men's jacket on the men's section, so they were goal-oriented. And for the other group of subjects, we asked them just to browse without clear intention, without clear goal, at the exact same time. And we saw dramatic differences. As you can see, for the goal-oriented, we consider their attention brain area were much more activated. So they used the rational system. While for the browsers, we can see that their emotional brain areas were much more activated. So they actually enjoyed the time while they were browsing, and they derived more pleasure from the interaction with the page. So we need to understand that human behavior is not a product of a single process, but rather reflects the interaction of different specialized emotional and rational processes. So we cannot use all our customers the same. We need to understand that they have different needs and different motivations, and we actually need to make sure that they will get only what they want. And our recommendation, in order to apply these findings, in order to actually personalize the customer experience, when we are talking about our browsers, the customers that use their emotional system, we need to track their association path, kind of like BuzzFeed. If you like this article, maybe you like this article. But also when we're talking about, this is not only relevant for content website, when we are talking about Amazon, for example. So if they like these jeans, and if they're in the mode for browsing, maybe they will like another purse that goes along with these jeans. So another thing that we need to provide them with a stimulating environment, to use catchy headers and colorful images and video in order to actually talk to their emotional system. And when we're talking about our goal-oriented customers, we need to think about it. This is customers that know exactly what they're looking for. So we need to make sure, we need to make it easy for those visitors to find exactly what they want. So we need to optimize the search and navigational element. But there is one more recommendation, and this is actually an extremely important recommendation. We need to make sure not to interrupt them. Because if you think about it, if you know exactly what you want, and how to find it, and you go to a brick and mortar store, and you are approached by this annoying sales rep that tries to provide recommendation about things that you don't even need. So maybe, just maybe, you're going to complete your purchase this time, but you're not going to come back to this store ever again. So if our customers is in a goal-oriented mode, we need to make sure not to interrupt them. Now, let's talk about personality traits. So when we are talking about personality traits, we know that there are some personality traits that change between the online and the offline arena. So, for example, if someone is an introvert, he can be an extrovert in the online arena. However, there are some personality traits that stay exactly the same. And we can detect those personality traits looking at the customer's online behavior. And we know that there are two personality traits that were found extremely important in predicting the purchase intention and predicting the customer's decision-making process. So Schwartz is talking about maximizer and satisfizer, and you can check, it is a word in Google. So for the maximizer, these are the customers that need only the best. So if they have a list of options, they are going to search through the list one by one. They are going to conduct a cost-benefit calculation for each of the different items in the website. And only after completing searching all the different elements, only they can make up their mind. And even then, they will never be satisfied with their decision. So I'm sure you are familiar with these people. These are the people who have very hard time making up their mind about their career path or any other decisions in life. And they keep asking themselves if this is the right decision, or if there might be a better decision out there for them. And there are the satisfizers, and these are the customers whom I call good enough, because if they have a list of options, they're going to choose the first option that meets their criteria, and they're going to feel good about this option and about themselves. Now, I would like to demonstrate how these different personality traits can greatly affect the way we make decisions online and offline, actually. So let's pretend that my criteria for a potential partner are that I want him to be handsome, I want him to be smart, and I want him to have his own home. So if I'm a satisfizer and I'm in a party and I want to find myself a date, so I'm going to the first person that I meet at the party, and it turns out that he still lives with his mother. So I'm going to the second person, and he's not that smart. So I will go to the third one, and he has it all. So the question is, can I choose him? Now, if I'm a satisfizer, of course I can, and I will feel good about him, about myself. I will be happy. But if I'm a maximizer, I will go to the first person, and let's say that he's not that good looking. I'm going to the second one, and he has it all, but I still cannot choose him because I'm a maximizer. So I will go to all the people in the party, and only after finish talking to all the people and pretending that he's still available, I will choose him. And even then, I will keep thinking maybe there is another option that is better for me out there. So when we are talking about the online arena, and I know that there is not audio here, but can I play a video?
No, unfortunately not, Lyra. Sorry about that.
Okay, so so just pretend that for the satisfizer, he has his own criteria. He's looking for a backpack for girls, and he sees the first backpack that meets all his criteria, and he can choose it. But when we're talking about the maximizer, same criteria, also looking for a backpack, but he will start paginating, meaning that he's going to go through all the items in the website. He's going to search for different pages, and only after finish searching all the items can he go back and pick the bag that best meets his criteria. The difference is that he's not going to feel good about it. So we really need to read and respond our customers' digital body language in order to reveal their personality traits. So, and we need, of course, we need to treat them differently in order to actually maximize their experience. So for maximizer, we need to limit the option to reduce frustration, because the more option they will see, the more frustrated they will feel. So we need to make sure that we are not going to overwhelm them. And I have to tell you that today, because we have so many choices, so most people actually turn into maximizers. And for Satisfizer, we need to offer filtering options for fast drill down to relevant options. So think about it. Let's say that you are a Satisfizer, as if you go to the brick and mortar store again, and as if you say to the sales rep, okay, I want these pants or these jeans in this size and in this color, and she will bring it to you. And if it fits, you are going to feel good about it, even though there are many more options or there are many more jeans on the shelves. You're going to feel good about it because you are a Satisfizer. And now for the last element, context. The context of which the decision was made. Now, the prevalent assumption regarding e-commerce product pages dictate that exposure to reviews, product details, and technical specification increase the likelihood of purchasing that product. And that is why I was so surprised to see this extremely strange behavior as I was looking at the customer's behavior on one of our clients, or big retailer in the States. So what we saw is that customers who scrolled all the way down to where the reviews and details and product information was located, they were less likely to add the items to the cart and less likely to convert. However, customers who didn't scroll all the way down, and hence they weren't exposed to all these product details and information, they were more likely to add the item to the cart and more likely to convert. So we decided to test this hypothesis. And we designed two different pages. As you can see here, these are the exact same products, but in one version of the page, you can see only the product and you can choose size and color. And in the other version, you can see the product, but also you can see detailed information, review, specification. And we actually sent 50% of the traffic to one version, 50% of the traffic to another version. And after a month, we have decided to reveal the results. And what you see here is that we found, again, dramatic differences. We can see that customers who were exposed to the product with only size and color, they were much more likely to add an item to the cart and much more likely to convert. So what's going on here? Now we need to understand that there are two types of products. Products that I like to call nice to have products or emotional products, and functional products. So what are the emotional or nice to have products? Let's say that I have a closet full of dresses. I don't really need another dress. I will purchase it because of how it makes me feel when I picture myself wearing the dress. However, functional products, then they don't make us feel anything. We buy them only because we need them. Nobody actually likes to engage in buying a mortgage or an insurance. We just have to do that. So let's say that I'm browsing on Amazon and I'm looking for a nice to have for emotional products. And then I'm exposed to all these product details and specification. So At first, I was controlled by system 1, by my emotional system, but in order to focus on the details, system 2 needs to come into help. And then all the purchasing process becomes much more complicated. And all these questions suddenly pop up. For example, do I really need it? Did I make enough comparisons? And then we decide to delay our decisions. So we really need to differentiate between different types of products, different types of content, different types of items. So we need to distinguish between nice to have and functional products. And when we're talking about nice to have products, we need to make sure to put product details and technical specification behind tabs for those who really want it, not to disturb our customers in their emotional process. But when we're talking about insurance or other functional products, so we really need to say what we want loud and clear, meaning that here we need to showcase the details and the price and everything that will actually trigger rational decision process. So to summarize, if we want to succeed in the digital world and in this world of information, we need to adapt technology to the way our brains work and not the other way around. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Liraz. Nathan.
Here I am. I wondered if we have questions for Liraz. I don't mind allowing maybe one or two of them in, and we will catch up on the time later. So what's the situation? For some reason, I can't see the question from here, so you have to assist me, Mark.
There's nothing come through so far. If anyone's got any questions for Liraz, just type them in now. Just type them into your chat pane.
Well, I had one actually, so I'll benefit from being alone after right now. Liraz, my question is, so obviously you've learned a lot about people's personality types and digital behaviors, and I was wondering whether you think any of that could be mapped to the space of communication and email usage behaviors and so on, because if it can, it might inform development of solutions in that space as well. What do you think?
I think it already did. So I already I conducted a study about emailing and about what types of message can be more effective. And of course, there are gender differences. But besides, I mean, there are message that, I mean, even if the content or the meaning of the mail is exactly the same, there are elements in the emails that will make one person to read your email and the other not to. So we need to first take into consideration to whom we are sending the message, and second, the way that we frame the message. And of course, it is extremely important to make sure, because this is the difference between a mail that someone is going to read or a mail that someone is going to throw away or ignore.
I imagine. So that's very interesting. Is that research that you have published or is available to people outside your company, the email part?
Yeah, I already published it, but in Hebrew.
Well, in my case, that's not even a deterrent. Can you share it with me and I'll see what we can do about it? Maybe I'll blog about it in English and make it available indirectly or something, if you permit.
Of course.
Okay, thank you very much.
Liraz, there's another question that's come in from Justin Lee. He said, I'm designing a game based on emotions. How can I apply these techniques to each type of personality?
So first, we need to use analytics in order to understand the percentage, meaning that first thing that we need to make sure is that in this type of game, we need to understand if customers are more goal-oriented or they're more browser. Second thing that we need to understand is both types of personality traits. Here, I only showed you maximizer and satisfizer, but there are different personality traits that we can actually analyze from looking at the customer's online behavior. So we need to look at the data. We need to look how the data is being mapped in terms of the psychological factors, and only then we can actually fit between the experience that we wish them to have and the actual audience that we have.
Okay, very well. Okay, so at this point, I will thank Liraz very much for a very interesting presentation. This was new ground for me. And we will move into our last session today, which is a panel discussion of the subject of addiction and information overload. And participating in the panel will be 3 people from the IORG steering team, namely Mark, Monica, and myself. And you can read our roles and doings in this slide. And we have Lele Terenzani from IBM, who is known as Dr. Connections. Sorry?
Hey, ciao Nathan. Hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So you present yourself later, right?
Hey, I haven't finished introducing you, Lele.
Yeah, go ahead.
I call you to order. Shut up. Here is the thing. Known as Dr. Connections in IBM, and I encourage everybody to go to YouTube and Google his podcast under that name, because he's doing some amazing things. And with that, I transfer the mic to Lele to guide this panel discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. You can also go on YouTube and Google the Information Overload channel and subscribe to it, because at the end we have several videos there, not only replays of this kind of sessions, but much more, right? There is a lot of content, so it's cool to follow as well, that one. So starting line today, Mark Powell, Monica Seeley, and Nathan Zeldes. So we talk about addiction and we talk about information overload. So we heard Mark, Monica, we still didn't hear from you. So she's the IORG secretary and she's director of Mesmo Consultancy. She has a lot to say about emails, right, Monica? Anything else we should tell about you?
I've got a couple of books out on the subject. Brilliant Email, Taking Control of Your Inbox. That's probably enough.
Yeah. So it was particularly interesting what we saw until now. Now it's like we didn't only understand how information overload can harm us, but at the same time we also understood how our brain moves in a different way, right? And this might cause perhaps addiction, right? So the first question, perhaps we can start with Nathan. What do you think is the addictions? Like, can we be addicted by information overload?
We certainly can, and we see lots of people that are. I mean, I meet them in my business consulting about information overload. And from what we read from the professionals who study these matters, there is indeed a connection to the level of endorphins and all these other chemicals in the brain that make us do what we do. So yeah, I believe it is definitely an addiction in the same sense that there are addictions to substances or to gambling, perhaps is a more appropriate example.
So that means we cannot make, we cannot give up of keep receiving information and using it and reading it continuously, right? That's how the addiction works. Absolutely,
yeah. People behave in very irrational ways. I can give you an example I like. I once was talking to this middle manager and we examine her inbox and I see this message and I say, okay, what's this one? For example, she says, oh, this one comes from corporate headquarters every week. I ask her, is it any good? She says, how would I know? I never read it. So I say, why don't you get off the distribution? And she was really shocked. She says, you want me to miss important information? So that's the level of irrationality that is behind all this addiction.
So it's kind of a fear of missing out at the same time, right?
In this case, it was the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
There are other examples, if I may share something. I was talking to a student. I mentor college students from time to time. This student came to me with a problem of extreme information overload affecting her life. And she said she's checking Facebook throughout the day from morning till night, every few minutes and so on. So I said to myself, and I wronged her actually in thinking so, that she's probably silly and looking at all these pictures of cats that her friends post and so on. And it turned out that this was not the case at all. She had thought about it very seriously. She had an extremely well-curated collection of about 2,000 sources, including groups on Facebook on subjects she found interesting, and YouTube channels and RSS feeds that she selected with extreme care. But there were just so many of them, and she was unable to give up any of them because all of them are interesting, she said. That was the situation.
So even if it's important and it's something that is relevant for us, it's learning, still it can be addictive. So let me also ask perhaps to Mark, right? So since you've been working with email logic and about email and suggesting about best way as well to to avoid the overload using properly the inbox. Describe me how an addiction for email addiction works.
Mark is muted.
Probably you're muted, Mark.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
I think there definitely are a number of factors. And one thing I've been realizing just recently is how uniquely intimate people's inboxes are. Much more than social enterprise systems, more than text even to a certain degree. You have a very intimate engagement with people in their inbox. And I think that's part of the draw for people to get stuck in their email. It definitely is an addiction from the sense that an addiction is a condition in which a person engages in the use of a substance or in a behavior for which the effects have you pursue that behavior despite detrimental consequences. And there are detrimental consequences for being buried in your email every day, all throughout the day. And I just put in a thing, how many times a day do people check their emails? And I'd be really interested if people can type in, how many times a day do you check your emails? And the next question I'd ask is, really, truly, how many times a day do you really need to check your emails? And I think one of the keys to it is that email addiction is not a difficult one to kick. It's not like gambling, which is another behavioral addiction. And one thing I know everyone here, certainly on the panel, knows, is just to switch your alerts off. And that's something that we've been telling people to do for years. And it is extraordinary how, we were talking about senior leaders earlier. Even senior leaders say, God, it's extraordinary. I've switched my alerts off. It's completely changed my day. So if there was one thing people wanted to do to curb their addiction, is just switch it off. It's very, very simple, because in order to tackle an addiction, you need to acknowledge when it is accessible, and having your alerts on somehow makes it very much more accessible. It's as accessible as it is if you didn't have your alerts on, but you're not drawn to it. So discipline is very, very important in tackling the addiction. Switching off your alerts and being aware of how accessible your email is. Switching off your work email when you're not at work, unless you really have a role where you have to respond to emails, and you will quickly realize how addicted you are to your email.
And maybe a question in this case to Monica is, how can we understand we are addicted or not? Like, are there some common symptoms to identify?
There are, and I think, can I pick up on a couple of threads that I observe and pick up on a couple of points that the previous speaker made? And I think it was Miraz.
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the things differentiates email and information overload addiction from the classic substance gaming, but particularly substance, is that email has the culture of the organization and the way your boss behaves, and I think, Mark, you alluded to it for a minute. It drives addiction. You know, addiction isn't just me on my own doing something. It's also what goes on around me that drives me to constantly look in and out of my inbox. And from the results, just briefly, of the survey that we've had a look, and I would urge anybody, and we'll put the link up if you haven't done the survey, we'd love you to do it, because I'm trying to, we and I are trying to run some research on it. But 70% of people, and I see this continually, check their emails on holiday. And one of the things that drives the addiction, both to social media and particularly to email, is when you ask people, well, why are you doing it? You've got, as you've said, fear of missing out. And there's this answer that's, well, it's expected of me. And my response is always, well, have you asked anybody? And so I think that in business, the culture of the organization and the role model that the chief executive sets should never be undermined. It's so, so crucial. So I think there's that missing as well, that's not there in substance addiction. Right, you fall into people and you meet like-minded people, but you haven't got the organization, in a sense, quite the same way. And I think your question is how do you spot it? Tell me if I've got it wrong. It's you
know, all the people that are listening to us, right? They might not know if they are addicted or not to it, right? So that's how can I understand it?
Well, there's several things. The easy way, dare I say, you can go to my website and there's an online tool there and you can assess yourself. The ways to observe it in others, if you don't want to see it in yourself for a minute, or the hints. How often do you check your smartphone? Is it almost constantly? How often do you get your smartphone out when you're in a social setting? And the answer's got to be why. Now, if you're a doctor on call, you'll hear it vibrating, and that's a different matter. Again, if we look at the initial results from the survey, you know, 50% of people are checking their phones in meetings. Now, are that 50% indispensable, or are they doing it for another reason? So it's the constant checking, it's the stress, it's the not getting the day job done.
Monica, we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you not hear me?
And now, yeah.
I can.
Okay,
go ahead.
I've maybe moved around. So I think you're looking for signs of stress, irritability. You're looking for people who have got mental health issues, which tracks back to things like well-being. You're looking for people who perhaps have, I want to say physical problems, like repetitive neck injuries and strain injuries, where they're constantly checking and looking at a screen, which may not be necessary. And I think you have to ask a person that you see constantly doing that, why? And then you start, and there are personality issues as well. Introverts, social media, email suits, but extroverts, in the office today where everything is quiet and nobody ever talks, it's the only way that they can talk. I should stop for a minute because I can go on for a long time. Let you ask another question.
No, but at the end, so I understood it's more like playing the lottery, right? Or playing, you know, the slot machine. So you want more, you keep putting coins and you're willing if some winning is coming, right? And if it's not coming, maybe the next coin, maybe the next coin, and so on. And the same happens with email or with Facebook. Like, let's see if the next one is coming and is bringing us more luck and we get finally the jackpot. But so Nathan, why do you think this is happening? What's the cause of it?
The cause of this addiction.
Yes.
There are actually probably many mechanisms. One mechanism that somebody once told me, and that I think makes a lot of sense, is that this is very similar to the machines in Vegas, the one-armed bandit machines. Because what you do is you keep putting the coins in and pulling the handle, and your hope is that finally something interesting, like a lot of coins coming out, is going to happen. And certainly there's the fact that most email is boring. I mean, half of it is useless or spammy, but even the part that isn't spammy is boring or annoying. And you always hope that now that you will pull a new batch of email in, or look at your email again and see what came in since the last time, you are going to finally have something that is more gratifying or interesting or fun to read or from somebody you care about, which is the minority of emails. So that's I like that explanation because I can identify it. I can see how that makes sense.
But even if you get the mail that you always dreamed of, like, you know, Nathan, you are the best employee in the world, I like you, I love what you do, and so on, you are still looking at your inbox just a few minutes after, right? So I don't think it ends there, but it's never ending, this kind of continuous checking.
That is a subject for potential research. Does the difference of time between pulling the mail vary based on what you pulled last time? And actually, Yoram Kalman, who used to be secretary of IROG years ago, did his PhD on the whole question of what he called the chronemics of email, which is the timing, when emails arrive and go and so on. And that would be a very nice subject for him to research. I may mention it to him.
Yeah. And maybe, we have a connection between what we do in the office, so when we use a lot of emails, but also what we do at home, right? So when you realize you spend a lot of time on social networks, as you were mentioning at the beginning, with perhaps on Facebook, and you were constantly looking at new news and information. So you have this kind of feeling that you lose time at one point, like you're missing important part of your life because you actually were there, attracted by it. So I think the same is happening in the office. So maybe Mark, is there a kind of a hit on productivity due to the information overload and this kind of addiction?
I think there's a massive hit on productivity. I don't think it actually. I know there is a massive hit on productivity, and it's extraordinary given that it's such a simple thing to tackle by just changing your behavior and putting some awareness onto it, that it seems to persist and actually increase in its volume. I think the latest research is that email volume will continue to increase for 3% a year up until 2022. Radicati have said that's with business emails, which is extraordinary given that there are other tools, and especially all the work you're doing, Lele, around that. But it is extraordinary how it continues to grow, and the amount it eats into productivity. So let me give you an example. I was speaking to a head of learning at a hotel in London, and I said to her, how long do you think each email user spends just deleting the rubbish emails every day? Just the rubbish, just deleting them. She said, I think about 10 minutes, certainly no less. I said, so there's 10 minutes a day, each person. I said, how many email users do you have? She said, 150. I said, so you have 150 people spending 10 minutes a day deleting rubbish emails? She said, yeah. So that's 1,500 minutes every day, which is about 3.5 working days. So they're paying three and a half people to come in every day just to delete rubbish emails. And she looked at me, she said, you know, we're paying a lot less to get rid of our real physical rubbish out of the back door to the rubbish men, the trash man. So that's just deleting the rubbish emails. And this is happening every day in huge organizations that are, productivity is their key aim. And it's happening on everybody's desktops. it's extraordinary, really.
You can
So,
tell
yes.
us in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, if how much time you think you're spending every day into deleting rubbish email and folding maybe what's not important. That's useful to know. Yeah. But I think also part of it is not only connected with our performance, right? So when we spend time just folding and deleting emails, maybe organizing, but at the same time there is some impact as well on us as people, maybe how we feel, or the frustration, stress, and so on, right?
Yeah, I think there's people have got out of the habit of just doing real work. I think people get confused a lot of the time with email being work when they're answering things from other people or deleting rubbish, and that is work. That's not work. That's not what really you're paid to do. You're paid to be an engineer, or you're paid to be an IT analyst, or you're paid not just delete rubbish communications that come through, but yet it becomes part of our work. And somehow it shouldn't be there. I mean, you wouldn't give an IT analyst work to do that he didn't really need to do, or was going to be no benefit to the organization. But yet it seems organizations are happy for them to, well, they're not necessarily happy, but happy for these people to continue to receive emails that are absolute rubbish. Completely no need to them, and possibly a lot of other people as well.
Monica, so connected with what Mark said, right? So I mean, email is in general, like particularly the organizing our email, right, and deleting it and so on is not work, right? So what is instead the good way maybe to organize our mail and so to work effectively, right? So what is the other face of the medal?
Okay. By the way, Mark, I think that's an underestimation. When I collect data, it can be anything like an hour a day just deleting emails, and multiply that by a few people and their salaries. But we know each other well. So I think in terms of organizing, first of all, and it goes back to something that I'll pick up on Anne's thread, because Anne had so much to say that I think links to what's going on, if I may. People have forgotten how to focus. I think she called it reticular activating system, the reticular activating system. Our brains have been changed over time because we constantly dip in and out. So there is one thing that says, first of all, you've said, but both Mark and Nathan, switch off the new mail alerts. But there is something as well about focusing and prioritizing, which is very hard, and people don't seem to want to do or can't do, and working out who are my important contacts that I must see emails from, which are the important people on the social media shows, going back to what you were saying, Nathan, that I really need to follow, and that is incredibly hard. So in terms of email, it's about filtering out, using the filters, the stuff that is irrelevant, either filter it to folders, filter it to the trash can, get off the circulation list. And that, of course, becomes a vicious circle, because people say, well, maybe I need to see it. And that goes back to the whole cover my backside culture. It sounds like it's catch-22. It is in some ways, and you can break it open. I think that the other thing is we ourselves, all of us on this panel, because I've deleted a lot of emails today, are the purveyors of addiction and overload in some ways, because we all send too much. And so another challenge is to reduce the number of emails that you send each day, because the more you send, the more you get. And before you hit send, it's about asking yourself, what is the contribution I am making to that person and the job they're trying to do? that's also tough.
So it's like
And
instead of we are not polluting the environment or as less as possible by using public transport, right? We don't trash things on the floor, but we use the trash can. We should actually think also about information and not overload and pollute people with that.
Absolutely. Think who really needs to be copied in.
Yeah.
And someone will soon pipe up if they needed something. And I think there's an element as well of, I don't think I know, looking at what are the appropriate channels so we're not constantly being distracted by Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is whatever, by the social media channels as well. So it's looking at what are the appropriate channels to use, when and where, and just creating quiet time in your diary. I have a lot of clients that I've worked with that either create quiet time for themselves, or they will create time when they're in the office with an open door so that people can come and talk to them instead of firing emails at them.
Yeah. And Nathan, I would like to learn something from you, since you are one of the main experts into not only in the causes and what is the addiction, but how can we get out of it, right? What are the various solutions to to avoid it from your side?
Well, I will talk to how to get out of the addiction specifically, not about how to handle email, on which there are many books written and so on. If anyone wants, I have on my website this ebook I wrote that is a free download that lists 160 something solutions to email overload and the interruptions. But with respect to the addictive part specifically, ideally you would say, yeah, you should have willpower and you should decide to make a change, like you do with quitting smoking or going on a diet and so on. And we all know how far that goes. So that can get very problematic. There are places where they actually have detox programs. In China, they supposedly have internet detox camps that seem to be applying rather violent methods to actually force people away from the online addiction. And maybe in the West there are more delicate programs, but still there are assistive programs that help people to quit the habit, basically. And as for what you can do yourself, one key thing I think is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries, setting specific time slots in the day, like after a certain hour in the evening or after dinner or whatever, where you simply will not check any of your online things and dedicate yourself to your family, to your life, to reading, to watching movies, to being with your kids, and so on. Once you have a structure to it, where you know that every day in those slots you're going to not be doing all this communication, that may very well help.
Yeah.
And there are also applications to help you do that, by the way, that you can install that will put your device into quiet mode where it doesn't disturb you on certain times of the day. And I would also recommend tracking your usage, how much time you are putting into this, because just seeing that number could scare you into some action, and to track progress over time. Definitely try to see how you are improving. Lele, we will soon have to conclude this panel.
Yes. I wanted maybe to have a final statement from each one of you about the concept is addiction and information overload. We recognize that there is an addiction. We recognize that there are solutions. So what are instead the solution from you, Mark? What would you recommend? Maybe just one or your favorite in this. Still muted, I guess.
He's slow to unmute.
Yes.
Well,
I do apologize. I think it links back to what Anne says, or Anne said about we create grooves in our brain, behavioral grooves, and we get into those grooves. It's quite difficult to get out, but it takes discipline. It takes awareness to begin with, and it takes discipline. Certainly, email overload is not a difficult one to kick, but you need to be aware of how is it serving you, where is it not serving you, how can you be more productive, what are the steps you need to take. They're not difficult. There are tips and techniques all over the internet, but it's a question of being aware, recognizing you've got these grooves in your brain, the way that you behave. It seems to entice us and lock us in, and we need to unlock ourselves. And really, it's through discipline, as Nathan said, setting boundaries, and just getting in control. It's not difficult at all.
Monica, any final statement from you?
I think it's about going cold turkey, even if it's only for a short time. That's one that works really well. So increase the time between when you check your emails, your social media, and reward yourself. That's a simple one, so that eventually you can get to the point that it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Maybe you can go for 4. Maybe you can go for the whole day.
Yeah. And I know one final thing for me. Maybe perhaps try to not bring your phone once for an evening or a dinner, or when you go out with a friend, or even when you go for a meeting with your colleagues. You will find out that there will be much more conversation, much more focus from your side. Right?
Lele, can I add one?
Sure.
We use with family and friends, the first person to get their phone out, unless they're a doctor on call, pays the bill. That's very effective.
Nice.
So thank you everybody for sharing. Don't know, Mark, I don't see if there are any questions from the chat. Is there anything that we should address?
Yeah, there were a few actually that came through. One is, Sandro said, I'm currently focusing on the relationship between information overload and fake news, which seem to work because we respond to them in automated ways that are similar to habitual addictive responses. So I'd be interested in any comment, insight that anyone on the panel may have regarding this relationship. That's from Sandro.
So I think Nathan can add any comment included with his final remarks, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. It's a very interesting question, actually. And I'll think about it. I'll pass from giving an answer right now.
Monica or Mark, anything about it?
I think, like Nathan, I need to think about it. Does it go back to how often you check? Because if you wait a little bit, if you wait, that fake news becomes exposed by other people. But if you're constantly checking, that the minute something comes up, you don't have that time delay.
Yeah.
And actually, even if someone exposes it, let's say it's a chat situation, like comments on Facebook or something like that. Even if somebody exposes the whole thing is totally untrue, other people are responding to the original poster, so they won't even notice that it was exposed, and they will immediately revert back to the basically hateful speech about it, is what I find.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, there is a lot of unverified content outside, right? And anytime we post something, at the end, effectively, if it's not correct, we create some kind of fake news at the same time, right? So we should be careful about what we share. And actually, if we figure out that what we posted is incorrect, the best thing would be to go back and comment in the same place about it, so that we fix the area, because nobody's going to check. Few people are verifying even scientific research, right? So that's the main of the...
I think people are digesting news in similar ways to the way they just digest their email. So when we talk about email, we talk about email. And actually, if you're talking about all the emails you receive, I regularly talk to very senior people who are receiving 150, 200 emails a day. I say, how many of those do you actually need? How many are relevant? And quite often they'll say 30. Yeah. So the other 150, 170 are just unnecessary. Well, they're not fake news, but I think we digest everything in the same way. So we'll be looking at news, and we'll be looking at this news and that news and really verified news, and then we'll see other news maybe that's fake news, and we'll just see it as as news. So I think there's so much information. We do less actually putting things into, okay, this is really important, and that's just, you know, not interested, probably fake as well.
Right.
I see.
Okay,
and
folks.
it's interesting to reflect on it and to think that's something to think about and to follow up on understanding. Anytime we read the news and we're not sure about it, just get to the source. And maybe also this is overloading less with fake information. So thank you everybody for this exciting and refreshing conversation. Happy Information Overload Day to everyone. And Nathan, this is yours for the concluding remarks.
Oh, I will be brief. First, I want to thank all of our speakers and panelists and moderator for their participation and insights here. And I want to thank Marcus and Mark, actually, for keeping this whole thing humming so neatly along. Worked splendidly this year, and we've seen worse in other years. And before we part, I'd like to share one thought. I mean, IORG was founded 10 years ago. And I've been working on this problem actually something like 24 years, I think. And over that time, the problem has certainly not disappeared, and it's not going to disappear. But we can see a number of changes looking back, say, between now and 10 years ago. First, the channels on which the overload happens and attacks people have multiplied beyond recognition. I mean, when we founded IORG, it was basically the telephone and text messages and email. The nature of the problem has also developed considerably, and the fact that we are talking about addiction as a real thing is something that has evolved over these 10 years. It is a recognized factor today. And the awareness that we have a major problem has also gone up. And the number and sophistication of available solutions is far, far higher today. And they are becoming better, and they are beginning to apply artificial intelligence methodologies. Now that's a somewhat general term, but we have tools today that are getting close to knowing your email needs and behavior as a human assistant would and did in the past. So we are definitely poised to see even better solutions in the future, which means that we've had an interesting 10 years and we are guaranteed to continue to have interesting things happen. And with this, I want to conclude the webinar. I ask everybody to stay online and complete the evaluation survey, which is just 2 questions that will pop up after we leave the webinar. They'll pop up in your browser. And also, if you haven't filled the... Go ahead,
sorry,
Mark.
Nathan, can I just correct you there? It won't pop up in your browser. It's on a link. It's going to be sent to you by email, or it's been sent to you by chat now. It's using SurveyMonkey.
Okay. My mistake.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, what Mark said. I said he's the guy keeping this running. Also, if you didn't fill the pre-survey that you got in an email previously, which should be in one of your reminders that you got to this event, then please do that as well, because we can use the information to further understanding of the problem. And with that, I bid you a good day, evening, morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you in Information Overload Day next year.
Yeah, very. Can't tell if it's a language barrier or if he is just a bit of a, yeah.